Good morning, PSWs and friends across Ontario and Canada. My name is Miranda Romanovic, and welcome to PSW Podcast, where we come to you guys live every single Friday at 11 a.m., where we talk about the realness of the PSW field, things that are happening, things that have happened, things that are right, things that are wrong. We talk about absolutely everything in the PSW Podcast. I am the host and CEO of the Ontario PSW Association and the Canadian Support Workers Association, and I'm joined by Ian DeSilva, who is our Chief Operating Officer of both said associations as well. And today we're talking about the unfiltered PSW world because, my gosh, there is so much information for us to hit today, Ian.
Absolutely. Take us away. Start. Where do you
Well,
want to
there's
start?
been, I don't even know. There's so much to talk about. So I think one of the places we need to start talking about is, of course, we've talked about some really serious things in the PSW field over the past couple of weeks. One of them being, of course, last Friday, we did talk about the food allowances for residents in long-term care homes in comparison to criminals in our jail systems here in Ontario. And what an absolute I don't know, it just blew up online.
And
It just,
correctly so. It is a kind of we were all shocked to hear about that. And I think I'm not surprised. And it is an issue we need to address, regardless of the economies of scale that relate to each administration. Nevertheless, it needs to be addressed.
oh, absolutely. And, a lot of people made a lot of really good points on there. We actually had people that were past inmates actually commenting on our post, which I found really intriguing and definitely interesting. As they said, they might have more money for food in our jail systems, but the food is crap, is pretty much what the collective was saying in all the comments on our video and our podcast from last week. And of course, the PSWs were talking about, yet again, how some homes do supplement in order for residents to have decent food, etc. But the majority don't. And
Yeah.
how the PSWs have to make do, and so does dietary.
Yeah, it also adds that huge stress onto the persons that provide that care, the families when they're seeing the food. Quality of life is really doesn't seem to be taken into consideration when it comes to allocating money for food budgets. It is obviously an economic model, and that's understandable. But I mean, at the end of the day, though, when has institutional food usually been good in Ontario? That's a question I just
I
thought of
don't know.
myself.
I don't know. But I
I
remember
had
the
some okay
story.
experiences. When I was in hospital at Lake Ridge Health, the food was okay actually,
I
but
was just about to say that it's one of the long-term care homes that I worked at. And I'll give a shout out to them. Holland Christian Homes in Brampton, Ontario, had phenomenal food. Like the staff, we would pay, I think we were paying like $5 for, and this is going way back, guys, but we were allowed to pay for meals if we wanted to eat at the home because they had enough left over. And I think because it was tied to the Christian Reformed Church and the church was coming in and also, adding to their food allowances and making food for them. So their food was absolutely delicious. And we'd always be fighting to get our dinners there as opposed to bringing them from home. So there are some good stories of food in long-term care homes. But
well,
the one thing that I'm really seeing, and there was actually a clip that our marketing director, Carly, put out that I wanted to talk about because I didn't realize. And I mean, I guess that's kind of a dumb statement, and it is an issue, and we should have been addressing this issue for a long time. But I don't think I realized how, like, I talked about a story, and you probably remember this, about how when I worked in long-term care as a PSW, we had to literally stash incontinence products in the ceiling tiles
right, yeah.
because there wasn't enough incontinence products for certain residents in the long-term care home, or nor were we allowed to access more incontinence products for these residents. And in that clip going out, it has blown up. It has blown up because one thing I realize that when we talk about short staffing in long-term care homes, when we're talking about the bullying in long-term care homes, when we talk about the food allowances in long-term care homes, and now we're talking about products that enable the PSW to do their job correctly
Yeah.
and the right way being withheld due to stocking measures or status that they need to keep or have in these homes. And it made me realize that no matter what we do in these homes, no matter what happens, we are being set up to fail
It
the
seems
residents. Doesn't it seem that way?
well, I mean, every department, this is the idea that goes back to the envelope and siloing. we don't have enough. There seems to be shortages in everything. There's not enough time to deal with patients. There's not enough incontinence products to maintain quality of life. Their food allowances are low. I mean, I don't even know what the laundry situation is.
It wasn't good.
I'm assuming there's issues with that too. So what we're dealing with is a system of ever increasing shortages and right across the spectrum. And I'm not.
And
How are these new homes going to? Are they going to have huge supplies of this stuff? I don't know. I
I
don't know.
don't know either, because I mean, on one hand, it's all great and fine and dandy
But
that
you're right.
we
I'm sorry. You are being set to fail. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
yeah, yeah, no, that's
It
fine.
seems
We
we
are
are.
being
Yeah.
set up to fail, yeah, as PSWs. And that's not fair to us as personal support workers because, we're being taught in school that, like I said in that video, is our whole goal is to keep these people dry and clean and
Mhm.
keep their dignity intact. I mean, we had taught something called DIPS when we're in school for PSWs, and
Mhm.
that's dignity, independence, preference, privacy, and safety. Okay. Those are literally, that is the oath of the personal support worker. That is what we need to supply and do for our residents, clients, and patients. And by not being able to access those products or those things in order to do that, you're setting up the PSW to fail. You're setting up the resident to be uncomfortable and not be taken properly care of. And I mean, I was hearing a story this morning about I was talking to one of our PSWs and she brought up that topic again. And she was saying about how, they lock those supply closets. And they say it's to keep the residents out. But why doesn't the PSW have a key? Why do I have to go hound down my administrator or my DOC or my charge nurse for them to open up the supply closet for me to access more things to do my care for my residents?
The only reason I can see it is because one time in history, someone took too many supplies at one time, and they said this is wrong. So now we have to stop it for everyone and treat everyone like they're guilty before innocent.
Yeah, but it goes back to that story, Ian, that we've told on here before, I'm sure, about during COVID, where we supplied this one long-term care home with a lot of face
Yes.
shields, right? And they didn't, and then we find out from our members that worked in this home that they weren't being given these shields. And you called them and they said, oh no, we put it back into our stock,
For
our
inventory.
pandemic stock.
So they classified the donation as an asset and then they wrote it up in their books. I'm like, are you kidding? I go, we did this as an emergency to you. They go, but in our inventory intake system requires us to track it as that. And once it goes into the system, then it needs to be redistributed across the province. And then this and this and this. And then they go, so we're not actually able to distribute them because it interferes with the distribution system internally in our quota system. So I'm like, but you're asking for donations to provide care. It was just outrageous. And so these are the types of things so we're creating and I don't believe these shortages are real. There's plenty of stuff out there. These shortages are all false.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I don't believe it at all because they're creating a false shortage to create this image that everything is so precious. But there's more than enough money in the system to provide this care. When we were
How
at
much money these long-term care homes are getting?
well, I was just shout out to Lake Ridge Health in Oshawa because we were there and they didn't have these issues. We were dealing with a personal care issue and they said, I'm like, can I get this? And I'm expecting your story where she's going to reach into the ceiling to pull these things out. She's like, no problem. The nurse went out, came back with a stack of materials. Said, these are yours. You can use them at your leisure. If you need more, give me a ring. My mouth dropped. I said, but that's not what I'm hearing in long-term care. I'm going foggy again. That's not what I'm hearing in long-term care. But so there is differences. If it can be done in hospital, I don't believe it for a minute. So we got a call on this to end in long-term care. Like these supplies should not be treated as a zero-sum game. We have factories that produce it. The supply, um, the distribution systems, the supply management chains are in place in Canada. So this is just ridiculous.
There is no reason for the PSW not to have the supplies that they require. It's not even a case of just wanting them, that they require to do their job to the best of their ability. And it's again, we're forgetting about the core issue is the residents,
Thank you.
right?
Yes.
Like these individuals, I couldn't imagine sitting in a wet incontinence product for hours because the PSW can't access the supply closet, or they're not allowed to
because
access the supply closet because there's not enough incontinence products to go around. Now, I remember going into a lot of these places, and you know what I mean? Which one? But you know what I mean? But it's I remember going into the closet. I go into the closet and head like feet to ceiling. There's so many incontinence products. You have the blue pads, you got the yellow pads, you got I mean just
tons of them. They
tons.
use them because they keep it because it's a budget item that can be easily controlled and easily attacked. Because if that number goes up, they're like, nope, 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 that's the issue. Other budget items they don't seem to be too worried about. But again, these are objects when it comes to internal allowances and how they do these envelopes, which is ridiculous. And it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed at all. It's not gotten better. And you're right.
No,
This is a future rights issue. But look,
I
at
was
the end of the day, it's perfectly set up because you're the patient, you're the family member going into long-term care. You see your family member in a wet incontinence pad. Your heart breaks. You ask the PSW, I need, oh, we can't get any more. We can't get any more. We're done. He has to wait until I get my next ration of them. The family member then theoretically, what's they're supposed to do? Go complain to the ministry? No, they complain to the PSW, who then has to justify that policy to the family in the middle of like all alone on shift and having to explain to them why they don't have these resources. It's not the PSW's fault. It's the
no.
administrator's fault. But the PSWs are expected to justify and explain and interpret government action. It's ridiculous.
Bear that responsibility. Well, the people that are actually responsible for making those decisions are sitting in their offices.
Offices, remember that. They're sitting in
Offices, not
offices.
on the floor, offices, not being affected by what is happening on the front line.
It's true.
And it infuriates me because when I brought up that story and I was talking about it with the PSW, like before we did the video last week, I honestly thought things had changed, at least gotten a bit better. And maybe that's me being hopeful, maybe that's me being naive, but I really hoped that something had changed for the better. And what I'm seeing is, and I was speaking this morning to some PSWs, like I said earlier, and we got talking about COVID times. And these are PSW students.
Yeah.
And they asked about COVID. And I said, well, the interesting part was, as I said, through COVID, the military went into some long-term care homes or called into long-term care homes here in Ontario because of the state
Yeah.
of these long-term care homes. There was no staff, there was nothing. I said, can you imagine the military asked for danger pay? These soldiers asked for danger pay to go into these long-term care homes.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, because of the state and the danger of working in these homes. And they were stunned. And they said, well, whatever happened with that? I said, oh, the military came out with a whole report.
Yeah.
I said, but then it got me thinking, Ian, because I'm like, they came out with a whole report about what needs to change in long-term care, all the issues in long-term care, and everyone balks about it and everyone cries about it and everyone says something until something else happens.
Mhm.
And then everyone forgets about it. But then it made me remember the Elizabeth Wettlaufer Crown Inquiry,
Mhm.
the nurse that offed was it 11 residents in long-term care homes by injecting them with insulin.
Mhm.
We were a part of that Crown Inquiry. We were a very big part of that Crown Inquiry. And they came up with some fantastic recommendations on how to fix long-term care. Not one, not a one of these recommendations have been implemented.
But that's the Canadian motif, though. I mean, we in Canada love, and every province loves to produce these reports, inquiries, beautiful documentation, 7, 8 volumes, cost millions of dollars, the best of the best, and then they go on a shelf. And then by the time that stuff is published, a lot of the evidence is already out of date because it takes so long to publish, so they got to go again and again and again. It's just a cycle of resources being produced nothing. So,
Well, I know, like, and like we hear from our PSWs, and like I'm going to say right now, enough is enough. Stop talking about it and fix it. And if I had the ability to fix long term care, and this is to everyone who keeps saying to me, then what are you going to do about it? Then I would. But
well,
I
this is
don't
the
have
thing.
the ability to fix long term care.
There
I
is
wish I did.
Well, there's no leadership in long-term care right now. There
No.
isn't. What we have in long-term care right now is a rudderless ship that's simply opens up new long-term care homes, brags about failures, and issues platitudes to a population that's exhausted. So no, we have we're extremely tenuously. We have very the situation is extremely tenuous, and we're seeing strikes starting to happen. The ONA is going on strike with some of these long-term care homes regarding some of the issues, and I'm normally neutral with these things, but I'm like, I kind of see it. We're talking
Oh,
about
I
for-profit
stand
homes,
behind. I think that
for-profit homes,
Opswas firmly stands behind ONA on
firmly,
that front. Firmly
absolutely.
stands behind ONA, and I applaud them for doing that because
Likewise.
it is going to bring. Because I mean, it's primarily nurses is what they're dealing with, but good on them.
Doesn't matter. Good on them because they're
No.
fighting a long-term care home. That's exactly the same issues that we deal with. And if we think that our issues for PSWs are only for us being faced, we're kidding ourselves. Nurses face the same concepts, but from a different angle. So
Mhm.
we get it too. But yeah, kudos to them because this is the whole thing. You're seeing long-term care stock prices have gone up 180% for that. Like using a certain company, we're going to produce a bit of documentation on this for some highlights, but there's something not right here. This is a system being milked for the benefit of a very few people.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that I've been a I'm proud to say it's my 20th year as a personal support worker.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I graduated, June 2006. It just ages me. But, to be that I started in long-term care in June of 2006, and it still has the same issues that we see 20 years later. You have got to tell me there's a major issue.
Well, I agree. There is a major issue because things aren't getting changed. And the reason things aren't getting changed because someone is making money, very healthy amounts of money.
Really interesting comment on our TikTok thread right
Oh,
now that I
sure,
need to
that's
read out
okay.
loud to you. Sorry, it's really important when my staff comes in to point at the phone that's streaming the TikTok to be like, you got to look.
Oh, I'm
Woman
sorry.
writes, husband's company is facing layoffs because they are providing 4.3 hours of care and government only requires 4. Well, that's a bloody new one.
So if they exceed the care level by zero point 0.3, they lay off.
Yeah.
Ratios, Miranda.
Ratios,
Enough of
yes.
this. Okay. I felt the Fixing Long-Term Care Act. I think we've given it a shot. I think we're seeing that it needs this. I don't
It
even
needs
have.
an overhaul.
I don't have words.
Long-term care in Ontario needs a complete and utter overhaul.
They
I
need to
will
start.
say
Of
I'm happy to see long-term care homes being built. I'm happy to see that
course.
happening. But what we're dealing with right now is a giant influx of personal support workers that are graduating into Ontario healthcare. The long-term care homes aren't even built yet. So they can't find work, a lot of them. And the minister of long-term care just announced last week that over 4 years long-term care hired 16,000 more personal support workers when we were told it was supposed to be like 27,000 more personal support workers. So that's
Bragging
not
about
a
it.
win, and bragged about it, and
Bragging
that's not
about
a win.
it.
I know, I know, I know, I know. And then we have the stalking issues, the bullying issues. Like, my God, how much do we have to talk about this before somebody in a position that can actually enact that change
Well,
do
we.
something about this?
I know. I agree. Unfortunately, you can't find out a lot right now. They're closing off the FOI thing, so things are changing, not for the better. So,
No, unfortunately, they're not. And
unfortunately,
so I
no.
think for personal support workers who work in long-term care, you guys are literally our soldiers on the front line. You do the hardest job in healthcare. And thank you. Thank you for doing it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for doing it. Thank you for taking that on and being those personal support workers, because it's not an easy job and it's not an easy job place. And I know some long-term care homes are wonderful to work for, and I will say that, and kudos to them, and kudos to them for not putting profit over people.
Yeah, let's hear. Yeah, you know what? And let's. Who are these long-term care homes? Because these are the ones that need to be shouted out and celebrated for their best practices. Because
Yeah.
if you don't have shortages, like there was someone in the comments, my house rations it, so we're good. That's great.
Yeah.
We need to hear about these positive stories too, because it's easy to complain and say things, but there are people that have found solutions, and we should bring them to the attention of everyone else.
We will.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, we will.
There was one other thing we were going to talk about today. Sorry, I'm just trying to find our agenda and I've lost it. So.
No,
There
it's
was another
okay.
issue. I can't remember what it
One
was.
thing I do have to point out is that on a positive note, PSWs, we do have PSW week coming up. So happy May
Yeah.
1st. It is now the PSW month, I'd like to say. We share it with the nurses and we appreciate that. But PSW week this year is May 17th until May 23rd. We are looking for your pictures and your videos and your comments as to why you became a personal support worker. We want to showcase you, on our profiles, on our Facebook, on our Instagram, and on our TikTok, so that we can celebrate you province wide, Canada wide, as the great PSWs that you are. So there is a cutoff date for that, and that's May 14th. All information is on our Facebook page or on our TikTok as well, if you need to contact us and send in that information. But we're also having on May 23rd a drop-in PSW celebration drop-in event. It is going to be in Cambridge, Ontario at the OPSWA offices. And we're inviting PSWs to come with your friends, with your family. You do not need to be an OPSWA member in order to attend this event. There will be food, drinks, and free PSW swag and giveaways that will only be available for PSW week. And last but not least, this is something new that we're doing. OPSWA wants you to sponsor your workplace or a workplace or an employer that you want OPSWA to come out and visit and bring swag and celebrate PSWs with you at your workplace for a short visit. So make sure you guys get in touch with us if you want OPSWA to come out. We're going to be announcing the winners of that sponsor a home or whatever, the week of PSW week, and we'll be coming to visit you guys over the coming months. But I think that's exciting. We've already had a couple sponsorships of long-term care homes. And so we're really excited about that because we love coming out to your workplace and celebrating you guys because we know how hard it can be sometimes for you guys to come to us. So we want to come to you. So this PSW week is going to be a great one. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of conversations. I'll be going live on PSW Day, which is May 19th. And I believe we're going to have a special guest come on as well to say happy PSW week as well and to celebrate all our PSWs. So it's going to be a great week. Lots of giveaways, lots of celebration. And yeah, it's going to be good.
I agree. Looking forward to it.
Oh, other provinces, you guys have your own. Other provinces, a lot of other provinces, like there's HCA Day in Alberta, I believe. I think there's one in Manitoba as well. But
They vary. Yeah.
Here in Ontario, that's the May 17th to the 23rd. But we will be celebrating everyone who's a PSW, an HCA, a CCA, a PCA. We're going to be celebrating you guys because really truthfully, without you guys, every healthcare system across Canada would fail. It wouldn't survive. So you guys need to hold your heads up real proud because no matter what people say, no matter how hard they try to crush us down, not just anybody can be a PSW. So we're doing the work that nobody else wants to do. So we should be very proud of that fact.
I agree. And I totally echo all of that. So well said.
Did you figure out what we were supposed to talk about?
No.
Okay. So that's next week for PSW podcast. So anyways, guys, thanks so much for joining us again on another crazy PSW podcast here from the OPSWA. We always appreciate you guys coming out, listening to us, vent. As I say, it's always Ian's and my personal vent session of the week. So I'm glad you guys can join us for that. Remember to stay tuned for next week. We'll be back again with PSW podcast. We actually have a lot of really great PSW podcasts coming up in the coming month and a half. We're going to have a lot of different guests and visitors coming on to PSW podcast to talk. So it's going to be really good. But I hope you guys all have an absolutely wonderful weekend. Thank you for working if you are. And if you're not working, make sure to put your feet up and enjoy your weekend. And Ian, it's always a pleasure to do this with you, sir.
Always a pleasure.
All
And if
right,
you're a member
awesome.
of the OPSWA, make sure you join. We're stronger together. And if you have good stories and you want to share them, let us know. Miranda?
Yeah, absolutely. And just a little quick thing to say there too. If you're not a member yet, all information is in our main profile here on Facebook or on our main profile on TikTok. It's as simple as clicking a link. And we also have a live chat on our website where you guys can actually talk to OPSWA staff if you have any questions or concerns. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining us on yet another PSW podcast. And with that, Ian, I'm going to say OPSWA out.